All right, we're in here. Large up the chat crew. Yes, we're getting old school. First of all, roll call before we get to the topics at hand. MT in the place, Dynamic Clips, Sam, NJ, Tawheed, Mark Hatch, Mr. Luca, Jay's Creps, Dominic A. We got Waltz in the building. He says, I found out yesterday John Fury had a biography. The world has changed much. I'm curious to see how it's written. John's not known for being a particularly articulate gentleman. Well, however it's written, you can be absolutely certain that it's full of a load of Jackanory stories. No doubt. Shout out to Derek Clark. Pound for pound in the house. Yes, yes, big up. Hold tight the Element crew. Pound for pound's on a great run of form at the moment with predictions. He just keeps getting them right. So if you see him giving a prediction in the live chat today, pay attention. Shout out to G Dez. He says, good evening from Western Australia. Everyone, Josh Taylor looks to have aged about 5 years since we last saw him. It doesn't bode well. Come on to that. Shout out to Star Fox. He says, the intro music makes me want to fling on some Peter Tosh. We've got Afro Jam in the house. He says, this fight should be high entertainment value. Yup. Because you got Josh Taylor, who not only has a naturally aggressive style, but a naturally aggressive personality. Although he really didn't show too much aggression at a presser. We'll come on to that. But Ekow Essuman has been in some absolute wars. I mean, that guy's been in some crazy fights. He's all action. He's all heart. He's very aggressive. They call him the engine. So, yeah. Hopefully the Southpaw and Orthodox don't clash or anything and they both get it in. Shout out to Dominic A. There you go. Pound for pound's already given a prediction. Pay attention. He says, think Essuman will just edge out Taylor in a very competitive fight. Can't see the stoppage. Shout out to Sam. Shout out to Jake. He says, was hoping you'd treat us to another live this week. Back again, bro. Sebastian says, yes, Hatman, just in time for the long drive home. We got Spartan Will. Big up, big up. Andrew's also got Ekow winning. Ethan says, did you see the Tony Yoka fight last weekend? I didn't see it. I heard about it. Andrew says 100-0 on the hard road. Yup. John Fury with his Jackanory stories. We got EA Wavy in the house. Is this fight at 140? No, it's at 147. Shout out to Anthony YouTube. Big up, big up. All right, we got a lively live chat. Let's get on to some boxing talk. So before we get onto the main event, on the undercard, Ekow Essuman versus David Jameson. How many of you guys saw the press conference with these two? Some, I guess, Alois Jr. fans have been getting at me in the comments over the stuff I've been saying about Alois. And I ain't really been going in, but he's an unusual character. And we saw it again at this presser because his performance, if you can call it that, at the presser was unbelievably cringe. That's one of the most cringe press conference performances I've seen for a long time. He's just like a naturally cringe guy. Tony S says Alois rocked in like Will Smith from Men in Black. That's a whole fact. And all of I don't know what type of angle or vibe he was trying to go for. Was he trying to be funny? Was he trying to be like cool? Was he trying to be ironic? I don't know what it was, but he just came across as mad cringe. EA Wavy says, Dana isn't promoting Crawford Canelo anymore. Yeah. Now it's going to be Sella and Riyadh season. Not sure why. Some people are wondering whether Dana is backed out of the boxing league and his venture with Turkey. But I saw an interview with Gareth A. Davis saying that that's not the case, or he doesn't think that's the case. Who knows? I guess we'll find out in due course. But it is a little bit of an interesting development. So yeah, presser, Ekow Essuman, unbelievable. It's not Ekow Essuman, excuse me. Alois Jr. The presser, Alois Jr., unbelievably cringe. Opposite David Jameson. Jameson has got a pretty spectacular beard. You seen this guy's beard? Seen the trim on his beard? The edges on his beard? Pretty spectacular. It's the face-off between the two. David Jameson's got a few inches in height. Alois Jr. coming in saying he's going to... What did he say? I can't remember how he described he was going to end the fight, but he referred to David Jameson as baby food. Okay, we'll see. David Jameson is no great shakes, but he can punch a little bit. He's been in there with some other British fighters. I think Chev Clark stopped him. So we'll find out. These are the records of the men. David Jameson and Alois Jr. Jameson 13-3, Alois Jr. 9-1. So even though David Jameson is a lot older, 11 years older to be precise, he's only had a couple more fights. Alois Jr. has a loss on his record. Some of you may not be aware. He lost his, I think it was his pro debut on points. Yeah, it's a mad one. But since then, he's beaten everybody that put in the ring with him. He's a pretty explosive puncher, but I want to say he's somewhat one-dimensional. He's a little bit basic, I want to say. He's not a dynamic pressure fighter, at least not yet. So we'll see how that develops as his career progresses. Shout out to Alter Ego in the chat. Jake says, Hatman, did you know Alois grew up in the war-torn streets of Syria? Yeah, he makes Penge sound like Syria, innit? Afro Jam says, Yoka versus Yaliev was entertaining and unskilled. Close, but you already knew he was going to get the win in France. Unskilled. That's interesting because Tony Yoka is a boxer. He's not really a slugger, is he? Was he dragged into a slugfest? Tony says, I never realized Alois was only 22. Yeah. He came up in the amateurs with Moses Itauma. And they actually fought in the amateurs. And he lost to Itauma. Surprise, surprise. That's when, according to Alois, Itauma was 14. And therefore, Alois was 16. Pound for Power says, Jameson got that Fagin beard from Oliver Twist. Down goes Johnny. We're going to come into that. Come on to that in a second. Pause. We're going to come on to that in a second. The down goes Johnny stuff. Afro Jam says somewhat in regards to Tony Yoka getting dragged into a slugfest. He did jab, but mostly slugging. A lot of the time on the ropes. All right. I'll try and see if there's a copy of that fight for me to watch somewhere. So yeah, there's Alois Jr. versus Jameson on the undercard. I'm intrigued to see that one. And then there's the main event. Josh Taylor versus Ekow Essuman. Now, just to give you a little bit of context there about this matchup. Josh Taylor stepping up to 147 for the first time in his career. He's been at 140 for God knows how many years. These are the fighters' records. All right, Josh Taylor, 19-2. Ekow Essuman, 21-1. So Essuman actually more fights than Josh Taylor, but obviously Josh Taylor has been fighting at a much higher level and winning at a much higher level over the years, although not in recent years. But he is just, interesting thing is, and also Essuman's actually a couple years older, but the interesting thing is that Josh Taylor has only fought once a year for the past 5 years straight. Think about that. Once a year for the past 5 years straight. So that's pretty inactive. And Essuman has been fighting twice a year for the past 5 years straight. So you could say Essuman has been a lot more active, right? Double the number of fights in the past 5 years. That should hold him in good stead, although he's been in a couple real wars, which would have put some miles on the clock. Josh Taylor, however, is coming off not just a lot of inactivity, but 2 losses. Back-to-back defeats to Teofimo Lopez and Jack Catterall. And, you know, you can talk about Lopez and Catterall being world level, but Josh Taylor looked jaded in those fights to me. He didn't have the same fire. He didn't have the same energy, particularly against Lopez, but even against Catterall to some extent. There wasn't the fire that the Taylor of old was renowned for. So the question is, how much of that is down to age, wear and tear? And how much of it is it down to him struggling to make the 140-pound limit? That's the question. We will find out on Saturday. Because if Josh Taylor doesn't have the old gears to go through, then he's going to have problems in this fight. Because Ekow Essuman is a punching machine. This guy will drag you into a dogfight and he will not stop. He's been hurt in fights. As I say, he's been in some absolute barn burners, wild fights. And, he manages to come through. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. If this was a prime Josh Taylor, I want to say I would confidently pick him. But with the questions regarding his recent form, the back-to-back defeats, the age, the wear and tear, the inactivity, I don't know, man. I'm reluctant to pick him, to be honest. But what say you in the chat? Let's get a show of hands. We know that pound for pound is going for Ekow Essuman. Is anyone in here picking Josh Taylor? Evil Uncle Phil says Taylor is getting stopped. The excuses will be ring activity. Indeed, Afro Jam says it's really 3 losses in a row. Wormwood says Taylor is in free fall. DJ Clockwise is picking Essuman as well. Anthony YouTube's picking Josh Taylor. Okay. Jimbo Jones says Taylor looked about 45 at the presser. AJ is picking Taylor. GK says, yo, Hatman, I feel like Ekow has the fire in him right now. Yeah, he's definitely got the fire. Regardless of what other people or regardless of anything else you could say about Ekow Essuman, he's definitely got the fire in him. Very, very fiery in the ring. Calm and polite outside the ring, in interviews and at the press conference, but in the ring, he's on all types of smoke. Striker says, I'm on the fence, but I'm going for Ekow Essuman. One second there. Wart says Scottish tend to age rapidly after 30. But I thought that was more down to like cigarettes and whiskey and and Tenant super strength and all that type of stuff. Fried Mars bars, deep fried Mars bars. I thought it was more down to that. I'd presumably Josh Taylor don't do all that, right? Yeah, I ain't brewing battered Snickers. There you go. Too much of that. Ming says Taylor a heavy favorite with the bookies. Is that right? So those of you picking Essuman, you might want to put a wager on with the bookies. You might want to put some money down if Josh Taylor's a big favorite. I mean, there's always the possibility of controversy, though, I guess. A controversial decision in Josh Taylor's favor. Wouldn't be the first time that's happened. Jake says, Hatman, did you hear the Atalma interview with Castro? I guess you meant Castillo. He spoke about his spars growing up and mentions a couple boxers that gave him a bit of a beating, but didn't name him. Do you know who he could be on about? I didn't actually see the part of the interview, because I did see some of that interview. I didn't watch the whole thing. I didn't hear the part where he was talking about the spars, where he got a beating from certain people. But I'll definitely go back and watch that now you've mentioned it. No idea who he's talking about. I have to go and watch the interview and see if I can deduce anything. Shout out to Jake as always. Shout out to Mr. Luca for the super chat. He says, make my day. A prime white or Usyk? Obviously Usyk. You want me to say Dylan White? Definitely Usyk all day. And twice on Sunday. Wart says, okay, yeah, they look aged. All right. Ming says Taylor is 1-3 on. Wow, that's pretty good odds then. 12-5 against for Essuman. Not bad. 11-2 for the stoppage. Yeah, if you're a betting man, it's definitely worth a punt. Afro Jam says, no, there is an unknown reason, but people from Glasgow tend to die earlier. Although Josh Taylor's from Preston Pans, right? Which part of Scotland is that? Is it closer? I think it's closer to Edinburgh, isn't it? So it's on the other side of Scotland. Red Rivet says, Taylor points, Ekow ain't getting stopped. Spartan says, yeah, I smell a dodgy Taylor decision in the works. Let's hope not. Let's hope there are no dodgy decisions on either side. Mr. Lucas says, big up the troops from Scotland. Wart says, I'm from Glasgow. Something I should be worried about? Question mark. Power for Power says, Atalma in a TalkSport interview saying Bacoli needs to get that boogeyman status back before he fights him, as his name has took a big dive after his last two performances. You see, I'm not surprised by that. I made that video a while back saying that I think this whole talk of Atalma Bacoli is cap. I don't believe it. Same goes for Atalma versus Hrgovic. I'm talking about next. He ain't fighting them guys next. Don't believe it at all. Just using those names for clout. It's just typical promoter stuff. You know what I mean? And now Atalma, I guess, is getting involved in it. Or maybe he's revealing indirectly the fact that it's just promoter talk. One sec, peeps. All right. Just making some adjustments. Encircled says the Bakoli that turned up versus a Jagba would get iced. I mean, it's possible that any version of Bakoli would get iced. I'm not saying that I don't think Itama can beat Bakoli. I just don't see that team taking that kind of risk right now with basically no reward. Do you know what I mean? I just can't see it. If they were to say we're targeting Joseph Parker by the end of the year, or targeting, you know, whoever, Daniel Dubois by early next year, that would be more believable to me. But fighting Martin Bakoli or Filip Hrgović next, I don't see it. Shout out to Niall Murphy. He says, I just heard the Moses track on Rumble. There you go. Speaking of Moseses, yes, I do have a track called Moses on my Rumble channel that a lot of people like. If you haven't heard it, check it out. Shout out to Niall Murphy. You gotta be from Ireland with a name like Niall Murphy. Shout out to the Irish crew. Oi McKenzie says, what a bunch of absolute... Okay, given it dodgy Taylor decision. Okay, so that's an angry Josh Taylor fan, angry at people suggesting that there could be any dodgy decisions. Not sure why. Dodgy decisions happen all the time in boxing. You know, I'm not one of these people that blames the fighter. At the end of the day, it's the judges that are responsible. Afro Jam says, the Jagba is better than you think. Well, he showed himself to be better than I thought against Bakoli, because I never knew that a Jagba had a back foot game. Normally a Jagba's like a potted plant. I've never seen him bust out a back foot game and start dancing around with a low left hand and popping a jab. Never seen him do that before in my life. I was amazed. So, yeah. Encircled says Bakoli made a Jagba look like Muhammad Ali. I mean, yes, obviously there's the fact that Bakoli was big, fat, 300 pounds and all that, but I've literally never seen a Jagba get up on his toes like that before. He's never done that. In all the fights I've seen, I've never seen him do that before. I didn't think he could do it. And Circle says that might be because Bakoli was so slow. What you mean, he felt like he could because Bakoli was slow, and against faster fighters he wouldn't do it? Maybe. But yeah, I never knew he had that in his game. Gerald says, what's the name of your Rumble channel? It's not actually my channel. But the channel that my old music is on is called The Bottomless Drink. The link is in the description of this live stream. So if you just like click the tab there, you'll see the link to the Rumble channel, The Bottomless Drink. JR says Sam Jones has been doing some Fisher damage limitation on TalkSport. What's he been saying? Afro Jam says Moses Itama versus Moses Jolly. Is that just because they're called Moses, both? Or is there some legitimate reason that you want to see Moses Itama versus Moses Jolly? Moses Jolly is literally like some kind of white collar fighter. That's his level. Encircled says, Bakoli looked like he was about to have a cardiac arrest after one round of work. He did too. Big up Robbo Roberts. Rahul Rai says, do you think Dave Allen can do Wilder in at this stage of his career? He might be able to, you know. He might actually be able to. Because Wilder is so shot. I mean, he looked terrible against Zhang. Terrible against Parker. And after getting KO'd the way he did, it's possible he might get done in by Dave Allen. But that's not a fight I don't think he would want to take. Afro Jump says, yeah, the names and highlight reel KO. If Moses Atama fought Moses Jolly. And he is a jolly guy. Jolly by name, jolly by nature, Moses Jolly. But God, is he awful. Jay says, Moses hasn't fought in 6 months and is coming back to fight a 42-year-old NFL player. Not a good look considering him and his promoter were acting as if him fighting Joe Joyce was dangerous for Joe. Well, I don't have an issue with the level of opposition too much for Atama because the Mike Tyson record thing is gone now, right? He's missed that. So there's no rush. They can take their time. 20 years of age. Frank Warren's very good at building fighters, developing them. I want to say he's better than Eddie Hearn at that. So, you know, mix it up. But if he does get past this guy, you know, unless the unthinkable happens and he gets chinned by some old NFL player. Stranger things have happened in boxing. But as long as he gets past him and gets past him in good fashion, then yeah, we're going to expect to step up. Not necessarily like top 5 in the world step up, but a step up, somebody that can give him rounds. He needs rounds, right? He's just blowing through everybody right now. He's very confident and poised. He's going to need rounds. Mark Hatch says Moses took a step back after the McKean fight. I definitely agree with that. From what I've seen of Balogun, seems like a step back, yeah, on paper. Jake says, Hatman, do you think Bacoli coming into the ring fat as a pig is disrespecting the sport and paying fans? I've paid for both pay-per-views he's featured on. Is it purely a cash grab? Well, I can't say that about the Joseph Parker fight because he took it on very short notice. So, you know, I can't say much about his condition in that fight. The Ajagba fight, you can say more about his condition, but then again, the turnaround from the Parker fight to the Ajagba fight wasn't that long. It was a relatively short turnaround. So he did have a full camp, but I'm talking about a turnaround long enough for him to shift all that weight. Do you know what I mean? It should have been enough to get in decent cardiovascular shape and get sharp from sparring and all that kind of thing. In terms of shedding all that timber, he needed a longer camp. You know, he probably needed 6 months. Shout out to World of Bob. Says, bottomless drink. Hey, that's good stuff, Hatman. Just checked you out. Big up, big up. Encircled says he could have dropped more than 11 pounds. And maybe he didn't have a nutritionist, you know. And also, you have to be careful losing too much weight in a short space of time because it can really weaken you. Tony S says, according to Billy Nelson, Bacoli was 280. And then in 1 week, he put on 20 pounds. Damn, what was he eating? Rahul Rai says, what would you say is your most unpopular boxing opinion that most other hardcores would disagree with you on? Big up every time, Hatman. What would be my most unpopular opinion? I can't imagine that picking Usyk to beat Muhammad Ali is a particularly popular opinion. And saying that Mike Tyson was overrated, yeah, there you go, Robert Roberts has said it for me. That's an unpopular opinion, I'd have to say. I always have to qualify that statement, though, because a lot of people use the term overrated as a pejorative, as if to say that when you're calling someone overrated, it means you're calling them rubbish. But I don't use the term in that way. I use it in the literal sense. They're just not as good as the majority of people make them out to be. But they're still very good in the case of Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson was a great fighter. But his fans go overboard. Do you know what I mean? Way overboard. Way, way, way overboard. Shout out to Joey Real Gamer. Oh, yeah. Evil Uncle Phil says, I can't believe Chris Eubank Jr. settled with Warren. That was a winnable case. I mean, I couldn't tell you if it was a winnable case. I have to assume if it was, they wouldn't have settled out of court, right? I don't know. I'm no legal expert here. Dr. Wu Doc says, fufu and cowfoot sandwiches. Did he eat fufu in Congo? Encircled says, I think Foreman gets overrated. He only won 5 title fights. Yeah, he only won 5 title fights, but when you think about the context of the time, Joe Frazier was an established, respected, dominant champion who'd beaten Muhammad Ali. George Foreman came along and wiped him out in 2 rounds. It's not like he came and nicked a decision against him, do you know what I mean? He literally wiped man out in 2 rounds. So that was a big win against the prime Joe Frazier, you know, who's stopping all these people, who gave Muhammad Ali his first loss. It was a big win for George Foreman to beat Joe Frazier. Big, big win. Then he goes in there against Ken Norton, wipes Ken Norton out. Well, before that, there was the Joe Roman fight. Joe Roman was a nobody. Then he goes in there and wipes out Ken Norton. So I'll be like, yo, that's a crazy victory considering how much trouble Ken Norton gave Muhammad Ali as well. After that, he loses to Ali, goes on to retire, but obviously he has wins, right? Comes back, beats Ron Lyle. That was a good win in a wild fight. There are some other people. I did a George Foreman career review on my Patreon page a couple months back now, or weeks ago, shortly after George Foreman passed away. There was a career review where I was showing the actual footage and analyzing the footage and whatnot on my Patreon page. Various fights of his, I was going over the video footage and giving my running commentary on it. And then, of course, he fought Evander Holyfield, lost that fight, beat Michael Moorer. Also fought Tommy Morrison in a world title fight, although it was the WBO belt, and that was lightly regarded back then. It wasn't really seen as a legitimate world title. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. I always say that the vast majority of popular fighters are overrated by at least some of their fans. There's always some fans that want to go overboard. A World of Bob says, Bacoli needs to lived the life. I thought he looked an absolute menace versus Anderson. Fat and fit style, but versus a Jagba, he was just a fat knacker. He needs to sort himself out, Martin Bakoli, for sure. Striker says, I was saying Tyson was overrated 30 years ago. I just really said it out loud so I wouldn't get chased by pitchfork-wielding nerds. Yeah, that's the weird thing about Mike Tyson, right? Mike Tyson, this ferocious fighter out of Brownsville, Brooklyn, the belly of the beast, foul mouth, especially after his original team disbanded with the death of Costamato, Jimmy Jacobs, and so on. Foul mouth guy, rough living outside the ring, you know? Yet and still, so many of his fans are these kind of nerdy, not all of his fans obviously, but some of his most hardcore fans are these nerdy guys who in some cases start channels or pages on Instagram, YouTube, etc., dedicated to trying to box like Mike Tyson, and they all look like absolute donuts. Do you know what I mean? They get their hair cut and they get a trim in, like a 1980s Mike Tyson trim, and the black shorts with the little black boots on and all this stuff. It's like Mike Tyson cosplay. Talk about cringe. That's cringe right there. So yeah, I'm not sure why Mike Tyson's got so many fans who are nerds. Do you know what I mean? It's weird. Joel's Gaming says, guys that fantasize about being Mike Tyson. Now that's terrible. Yeah, there's loads of them. There's loads of them. There was one whose channel got shut down for some reason, and he was the biggest Mike Tyson fanboy I have ever seen in my life. If you ever saw this guy, seriously, you would have had to call the men in white coats. I was subscribed to his channel just for the jokes. I used to tune in and watch his videos. He would be in his bedroom, right, with this like heavy bag strapped to the wall with all the different number combinations. And he would say, this is the combination that Mike Tyson likes to throw. And he would have all the names for the different punches, which are different. They're not named the same way as conventional punches. And he would always talk about how he'd spoken to Steve Lott. And Steve Lott told him that the Mike Tyson Costamato peekaboo style was done in this particular way. And the technique was like, I mean, this guy was like the biggest nerd you've ever seen in your life for Mike Tyson. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. I'm actually hesitant to even name his channel. His channel don't exist anymore, but I'm hesitant to name it because, you know, now you can get done for cyberbullying. This guy was like the biggest Mike Tyson weirdo nerd you've ever seen. There's not a single one of you who could have gone to his channel and not have been completely, first of all, you'd have cracked up, and then you would have been bamboozled by how weird and nerdy this guy was. Oh my God. I wish his channel still existed because the entertainment there was priceless. In Circle says, well, these people that think if he stayed with Rooney, he'd be 750-0 and still champion. Yeah. They probably think he'd still be champion now. You know what I mean? At 60 years of age. Joey Real Gamer says, Hatman Josh Taylor looks shot to me. Like he looks different. Yeah, he's older. Back-to-back defeats. And he doesn't have the same energy about him, does he? He looked jaded in his last two fights. And at the press conference, where was the old fire that Josh Taylor used to have? Maybe he's trying to lull Ekow Essuman into a false sense of security. Is that wishful thinking for the Taylor crew? I don't know. We'll find out on Saturday, right? Robbo Robert says, me and my friend nearly fell out because I said he got beat by nearly everyone he couldn't intimidate, which was his number one weapon. And that's how fanatical Mike Tyson enthusiasts are. I'm going to call them enthusiasts. Yeah, that's how fanatical they are. They'll literally fall out with friends, some of them, for critiquing Mike Tyson. It's crazy. And for me, Mike Tyson was the most exciting heavyweight of all time. I love watching Mike Tyson. But the way people go overboard with how good they claim he was, and if it stayed with Kevin Rooney, it would have been 200-0. I'm like, damn, so even harder than John Fury then. In fact, let me just plug a couple things here, because I uploaded, I always upload content to Patreon, but the content this week is Johnny Fisher, Dave Allen live commentary, the video version. Yeah? So it's my live commentary with the actual video, the actual fight footage itself, with my live commentary. So I've turned the DAZN commentary down, not completely off, so you can still kind of hear it in the background with the crowd and whatnot. But it's my live commentary over the actual video of the fight, which you can see on screen. So that's on my Patreon page today, on the boxing tier here. All right. And also, what I uploaded today to the boxing tier on my Patreon was something that some of you guys were asking for. The infamous Kell Brook voice note. Yes, I mentioned this a few live streams ago because some people weren't aware of it. I was quite surprised about how many people were unaware of this infamous voice note. Well, I found it because, I like to keep them receipts. I got those archives, and yeah, I looked through, I found the voice note, uploaded it to my Patreon page on the boxing tier, and I took this screenshot quite a few hours ago, but you can see people were cracking up after hearing the voice note. And for those of you who don't know, this voice note came out, I want to say 7 or 8 years ago. I was sent it by somebody from Sheffield, like I say, about 7 or 8 years ago. And I was already told by a couple of people from Sheffield prior to being sent that voice note that Kell Brook has an alternative lifestyle. Let's just describe it that way. But one of those same people later on sent me the voice note. And so this voice note is a guy who's clearly from Sheffield by his accent, who gives this ostensible backstory to a car crash that Kell Brook was involved in, where an X5 or whatever that Kell Brook was in crashed into a wall, I think it was. You can find the story in the newspapers even now, right? If you look online. And in this voice note, this guy is giving the backstory to what happened with that crash. And it was some weird stuff that this guy claims Brook was doing that led to that crash. Then he goes into the incident in Spain where Kell Brook got shanked and the story behind that. And various other things to do with Kell Brook's personal, personal life. Yes, it's tea. Man spilling the tea. So man spills the tea on Kell Brook's, alternative lifestyle behind the scenes and some other stuff that Kell Brook's been involved in. And look, The internet is full of people who make stuff up, obviously. But I've had this voice note for years. And the detail that this guy goes into, and he puts himself in certain situations where he was with Johnny Nelson and Johnny Nelson's wife, and he names all these different names and whatever, people I've never heard of before, people that he knows, and Sheffield people, right? There's just far too much detail for this guy to be making it all up. Way too much detail, way too much inside knowledge. Do you know what I mean? Names and what have you. So I am 99.9% sure that this guy absolutely is basically within Kell Brook's inner circle. 99.9% sure. See, the voice note is crazy. If you haven't heard it, well, there it is on my Patreon page. East Midlands Fight Fan says 3 or 4 people told me he was Rainbow. One of those was his cousin. Yeah. Craig Welsh Boxer says he's clearly telling the truth as well. You can just tell. Yeah, you can tell. The voice note is blatantly authentic. Blatantly authentic. Alex M says, Hatman, add me to the Element group, please. All right, I'll add you. If you just give me your username, if you haven't done so already, on the latest post. What is the latest thing I uploaded? Depending on what tier you're on, drop your username, your Element username, either on this Kell Brook voice note post or on the post before that, which I think was before or after that, which I think was the part 2 to the Mechanics of Faith. So just drop your Element username there and I'll add you. Encircled says, I had some guy tell me Mitch Green was better than AJ. Dear, oh dear. Jake says, Hatman, do you think Dom Ingle gives limp-wristed vibes? The Ingle gym is weird as hell. Right? Weird as hell. And there was a video which I've also got in the archives. It was a documentary. I think it might have been a BBC documentary. And in this documentary, oh my gosh, Brendan Ingle and Harold Graham. Bro, it was so messed up what I saw in that documentary. It's incredible they even put it in there. But the relationship between Brendan Ingle and Harold Graham was, oh no. Oh, there is one of the most shocking scenes that's ever made it to television regarding boxing in that documentary. Shocking stuff. And so since then, it's been a suspect gym. And I actually posted a clip of that, the thing I'm referring to, in the Element group a few weeks ago because people were talking about it. And I was like, yeah, this is going to be the most zesty thing you've ever seen in boxing. Way more zesty than anything Tank Davis has done. Way more zesty than anything you've ever seen. Was this scene in a documentary back in the days with Brendan Ingle and Harold Graham. By far, I mean, nothing even comes close to how zesty this was. It's crazy. Crazy. So it's a zesty gym. Alex M says, I'll drop my username on the Kell Brook post. All right, I'll add you. Big up. Cal says, what did they do? I don't even want to say what they did because I'd have to wash my mouth out with soap and water. It was so, yeah, JR says, a training session at Ingles Gym is similar to a Barrymore pool party or a Diddy party, you know? It was so Diddy, very Diddy-esque, this thing. This was a shocker. An absolute shocker. Rex says apparently Fury was 60% for the Usyk rematch. Same old from John Fury and the Fury camp. Excuses. I mean, Harold Graham himself, let's be real. Listen to the way Harold Graham talks, bro. There's almost like some continuity between the way that Harold Graham speaks and the way that Kell Brooks speaks. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, we're spilling the tea. Gossiping like some fishwives over here. Greg says, was going to ask for the link to see it, but on second thoughts, I think I'll just leave it. I do have the video. I have it downloaded and I can share the clip on Patreon or even in the Element group. I can share the clip there if people want to see it. Shout out to Matt for the super chat. He says, is it true that they don't allow PED use for recovery post-fight? Do you feel it would help improve fighters' overall longevity allowing so? Yeah, they don't allow PED use at all, in or out of competition, as far as I'm aware. Certainly in the UK, that's not allowed. No kind of PED use in or out of competition is allowed. In America, is it different? I don't know. But in the UK, yeah, you can't use any type of PEDs in or out of competition. Would it help improve fighters' overall longevity allowing it? Depending on the PEDs, I'd have to imagine it would. Yeah. I'm sure there are PEDs that help with recovery, rebuilding muscle that's maybe been damaged or just broken down through resistance training. So I'd have to say, yeah, I'm no expert on PEDs, you understand? I'm sure there are some people who are far more qualified to speak on it than me in the chat. But from what I do know about them, I would say, yes, it probably would. Again, depending on the PED, because PEDs come in a variety of types, and some of them can actually damage you physically with long-term use. So it depends on the PED. Afro Jam says, people do get exemptions in all sports, don't believe that nobody is doing it. Well, we know that plenty of people are doing it, but it's just that PED use, as in illegal PEDs, without an exemption, you can't use them in or out of competition. But yeah, there are people who get quote-unquote therapeutic usage exemptions. I remember Lamont Peterson was getting TRT, testosterone replacement therapy. But I think did he get a ban for that though? I don't think he had permission or whatever. I think he got a ban for that. Andrew says AJ did. Yeah, AJ was alleged. It's never been proven. But then again, it wouldn't be proven if he's being allowed by the British board, you know? It would all stay confidential. And yeah, for those who want the next level of Down Goes Johnny, the next level Down Goes Johnny experience, I've uploaded this to Patreon. It's my live commentary over the actual video footage of the fight. That's on my Patreon page on the boxing tier. Right here. You know, it works the same way as Netflix. There's no contract or anything. Cancel whenever you want. So that's on there. And as I say, the Kell Brook voice note, the infamous voice note, which delves into his past, that's on there as well. And as far as the topical content on Patreon this week, the Brotherhood of Reason is the topical tier. I uploaded, last week it was The Sinners Decoded. Right, so I did a decoding of the movie Sinners. And you can actually listen to a free 10-minute sample of that if you click the link. And the one I uploaded earlier on today is The Mechanics of Faith Part 2. So that goes into, God, how could I describe it? In Part 1, I go into the mental and emotional compatibility or incompatibility of certain religions and even political ideologies with individual minds. Because obviously in certain religions, the Abrahamic faiths, or two of them at least, they have a one-size-fits-all approach. They think that everybody should be following these faiths, right? And there are certain political ideologies that also have this kind of one-size-fits-all philosophy. And so I go into the reasons that there is no right religion or right ideology, political ideology, philosophy for everybody, because people are all different. So anyway, I go into the Mechanics of Faith, Part 1 and Part 2. In Part 2, I'm more so focused on why black males, not females, very different with females, but black males in the diaspora, why so many of them, enormous numbers of them, despite growing up in Christian families, have turned their backs on Christianity, walked away from the church, don't want nothing to do with it. I go into the reasons for that, and it's multi-layered, multifaceted. So that's the topical Patreon content this week. So those are the plugs. We'll get back onto boxing and other stuff here. Banter. Triple R says, Harold Graham was known to be a ladies' man back in the days. I'm from Sheffield, so I've heard stories. You could say being black and rainbow was really bad back then, so you could argue it was a cover though. Well, Yusuf Mack, you guys remember him? Yusuf Mack has got like 12 kids or something. So, being a ladies' man doesn't preclude people from going the other way as well. Anyway. Bobby Boucher. That's a Waterboy reference. Anyone know the movie The Waterboy? Television is the devil, Bobby Boucher. It's interesting. Somebody called Bobby Boucher pops up right when I was talking about religion. The voice note is about Kell Brook's alternative lifestyle. It's some guy who obviously is from Kell Brook's inner circle, and they're spilling the beans in a WhatsApp voice note, which is about 6 or 7 minutes long. This guy is talking to a bunch of other people in a WhatsApp group with this voice note, and he's giving some backstory regarding what happened when Kell Brook was involved in a car accident. Kell Brook was in the back of the car doing, well, let me not even describe what he was doing. But the guy goes into it in the voice note. All right. So he goes into that. He goes into the backstory for why Kell Brook got shanked in Spain and a load of other stuff to do with his career in the run-up to fights, the stuff he was getting up to, so on and so forth. Joey Real Gamer says, Sinners was definitely an experience, very creative film. Afro Jam says, shocked Nassim Hamid never exposed anything from that gym. But he did leave the gym, didn't he? In kind of mysterious circumstances. He and Brendan Ingle fell out. Same says, I can't see the video on Element. Everything is encrypted for me. You need to go into the security settings in Element and deal with the keys. If there are like duplicate keys, security keys, you need to delete some and only keep the one that has a green, I think it's a green dot or green tick next to it. After this stream is finished, they'll go into Element and have a look and try and post something somewhere for you so you know how to deal with that issue. Because Element is like fully encrypted. And yeah, it's not quite as user-friendly as something like, what's it called now? What's the one that everyone uses, all the gamers and stuff use? Get the name of it. I used to use it before I got banned off it. Shout out to Triple R for the super chat. He says, what was Kell Brook catching or pitching in the car? I'm not even going to go there. Discord, thank you. Discord. Kell Brook was involved in some backseat activity, all right, with apparently a dangerous individual. And this resulted in a car crash. See, yeah, the voice note is wild, bro. That's what it's wild. But yeah, Discord. Discord is a more user-friendly interface than Element. Element is like, if you compare, I don't know, Mac OS or even Windows to Linux. That's the difference between Discord and Element. Element is like a real nerdy, do you know what I mean? A nerdy version of Discord with full encryption, because Discord doesn't have encryption. That's how you can get banned off Discord. Right? The people that run Discord, if they look in the chat and see that you've said something which is which violates their, you know, community guidelines, just like YouTube, they just kick you off. That's what they did to me. I don't even know what I said. Probably something extremely mild, but they were like, oh, nope. You know, the woke brigade jumped on me and banned me off Discord. So after that, I was like, nah, mate, we got to migrate over to Element, which is completely encrypted. Nobody can read the conversations. Element, Discord is woke as hell, in case anyone didn't know. Black Dynamite in the chat, he says, remember that one username on Discord who had 77 in his name? The guy was certainly an agent. I don't actually remember him, you know. Can't remember him. Marco says, who you got, Hatman? I got Ekow by split decision. Taylor 2 jaded at 140. Yeah, I'm kind of leaning that way as well. I'm kind of leaning towards Ekow, but as I said earlier on, if Taylor was at his best, I'd confidently pick him. But Taylor has lost 2 in a row, and you could argue 3 in a row. And he's been fighting only once a year for the past 5 years. Debyarka says privacy is considered an extreme desire these days. That's right. That's right. It's like, oh, what do you need privacy for? What are you hiding? Unbelievable. You know, when you live long enough, you get to see the way society is engineered. Back in the 80s and the 90s, before the digital age, privacy was something that the average person took very seriously. Like, back in the days when we were using analog cameras, yeah, you would have to take the film from the camera to get developed. And when you would take it to get developed, there was all this discretion. People were not allowed to, you know, other members of the public were not allowed to see your photos. You know what I mean? And if somehow your photos slipped up, oh no, even if they're just innocent photos, I mean, 99 times out of 100 they were, people didn't tend to get indecent photos developed at Boots or whatever. They would use Polaroid cameras. But yeah, people were just a lot more serious about their privacy back then. And it was just a standard thing. Everybody understood privacy. Whereas today, because of social media and, I mean, I remember when the first ever Big Brother came out. In my head, I was like, this really is Big Brother though. Because they're trying to condition people to get used to being filmed all the time. Do you know what I mean? I remember when Facebook, back in the days, when you would log in, it would warn you, don't use your real name and real details on the internet. Now you can't log in without using your real name and real details. Imagine that. Anyway, rant over. Jake says, Hatman, do you have any guilty pleasure boxing channels you listen to for the jokes? Not anymore, you know. Not anymore. Like I say, there was that Mike Tyson fanboy channel I used to watch for the jokes, but that channel no longer exists. I wish it did exist still, because I'd like to send you guys there discreetly, you know, without getting a community strike for cyberbullying or something. Because this guy, I'm telling you, you would have keeled over laughing if you'd seen this guy's channel. Crazy. The biggest fanboy you will have ever seen in your lives for any fighter. Epic Euphoric Music says, Hatman, do you think Usyk would have been so successful if not a Southpaw? Probably not. Probably not. Still would have been successful, but maybe not quite as successful. The Southpaw thing is an advantage. And that's why those former Soviet countries, and during the Soviet Union, also Cuba, that's why they would teach so many of their boxers to box Southpaw, even if they weren't left-handed. Because it was seen as an advantage. Afro Jam says, Hatman, do you know about the Hated One channel? No, I don't. Is it a boxing channel? Tony S says, what boxing channels do you personally watch? I watch Dwyer. I watch G-Man. I watch Boxing on the Edge and Boxing on the Edge tutorials. Anyone who's just getting into boxing, as in you've taken up the sport of boxing, you just started going to a boxing gym and you're trying to learn the sport, you absolutely must go to Boxing on the Edge tutorials on YouTube. Fantastic breakdown that he does in his videos about the basic techniques of boxing. Fantastic stuff. I mean, he did one video the other day, which might have been 20 minutes long, about the jab to the body. Now, newcomers to the sport might think that's insane. A 20-minute video about one punch, right? A jab to the body. Trust me, boxing is a lot more technical than you think. And when you learn the correct technique, when you learn the basics the right way, it will take you so far. So make sure you check out Boxing on the Edge tutorials. Yeah, fantastic content on his channel where, you know, he's a boxing coach and he's demonstrating, not just explaining, but demonstrating. He's moving around and throwing the punches, and sometimes he's in the gym training people. Sometimes he's outside and whatnot. And yeah, fantastic stuff particularly if you're a beginner, but even more experienced boxers could learn a thing or two from his videos. So yeah, Boxing on the Edge tutorials, because he's got Boxing on the Edge, which is his main channel, and then Boxing on the Edge tutorials, which focuses on tutorials, obviously. Robbo Robert says, what about proper boxing? He's quite funny. Yeah, he's got his how could I describe it? Formula. Yeah, proper boxing has got his formula. He's very funny. And he does his thing. East Midlands Fight Fan says, does Usyk sometimes switch? The only time I've ever seen Usyk switch was on the pads before the first Tyson Fury fight. And he looked terrible from an orthodox stance. I don't know if he was deliberately trying to look terrible or he was genuinely that terrible because he's just not used to fighting orthodox. Afro Jam says the Hated One channel was about privacy, security, and tech companies. Okay. Encircled says, I've seen him switch mid-combo. Yeah, briefly maybe, yeah. Briefly. Mid-combo he might switch. But in terms of like, for prolonged periods, orthodox, I've never seen that. Oh yeah, of course, I watch Adeola Depot, of course. Yeah, I watch Adeola Depot. Yeah, I've seen a guy called Henry as well. I think a guy called Henry's actually in my Element group. I think that's him. Because there is a guy called Henry. There's a couple guys called Henry in my Element group. I think he's in there. But yeah, I've seen his videos. He does good stuff. Now, Triple R says the disadvantages of being a southpaw are rarely spoke about. In general, southpaws are more open to the right hand and body shots. Usyk has overcome fighters who have that in their shot selection. Well, I would disagree regarding the body shots. I think that most southpaws are actually less susceptible to body shots. Southpaws who fight really side on, it's more difficult for an orthodox fighter to hit him with body shots because of the way the angles line up. Their torso is at an awkward angle for hooks to the body, for example. It's at a really awkward angle. So you need a southpaw to commit to throwing a shot, a left hand, let's say, which then squares their body up. Then you can hit him like Tyson Fury was against Usyk with an uppercut to the body. But if you think about it like ballroom dancing, where a woman would need to position herself in order for you to embrace for a ballroom. Not that I've ever had a ballroom dance, but you know, this is just a visual representation of what I'm talking about. That's like two orthodox fighters fighting each other. Yeah? They kind of slot together when they're fighting and they can get at each other's bodies quite easily. Whereas a southpaw, the lead hands are clashing. And therefore your left hook all of a sudden is at a weird angle to land on the southpaw's body. Does that make sense? And everything's just weird, right? It's easier generally to land body shots on orthodox fighters. The right hand, it can be easier to land on a southpaw depending on who you are, you know? Amir Khan was very good at landing right hands on southpaws. Bernard Hopkins was very good at landing right hands on southpaws. But pressure fighters generally struggle more with southpaws than stand-up, you know, long-range boxers do. Long-range boxers tend to do a bit better against southpaws, but pressure fighters tend to struggle with them more. Pressure fighters tend to throw a lot of hooks, right? And really, with southpaws, it's the straight shots, generally. The straight right hand down the pipe that gives them the most trouble. Tony S says, Hatman, did you hear Tunde say he's heard through the grapevine that Turkey's offering AJ a 3-fight deal, White, Anderson, and Tyson Fury? Yeah, spoke about this in yesterday's stream. Yeah, I saw that video, Tunde and Spencer, saying that that's the word around the campfire. Campfire, grapevine. Tony S says, thoughts on Caballero rejecting Klitschko's offer for a fight? I had no idea that was a thing. Klitschko offered Caballero a fight? I'm assuming you mean Vladimir Klitschko, right? I hadn't even heard of that. I'm surprised Klitschko would offer someone like that a fight, to be honest, especially at his age. With all the time out the ring. Maybe he feels upstaged because Caballero's the main man in German boxing right now. Felix says, I'm a southpaw and only get hit to the body by other southpaws. Angles don't line up with orthodox fighters. You can see them coming easier. Yeah, this has always been my experience. That it's actually more difficult to get to the body of a southpaw than it is an orthodox fighter generally. The exception would be southpaw pressure fighters, because they tend to fight more square up. And when you're more squared up, you can get to that body with the hooks. But when a southpaw's fighting side on and they're fighting long, it's very, very awkward to try and get to their body in most cases. You got to walk them onto a body shot, but going forward, trying to get body shots, it's very difficult. It's very difficult. It's not impossible, but it's difficult. The angles are all wrong. Trollsabad says, I heard the Klitschko thing, but not sure I buy it. Striker says, I think someone mentioned it on your Element Hatman. I could be wrong. Okay, I'm trying to see. Oh, referring to Caballero Klitschko. Okay. I'll check that out. Shout out to Striker. Raja says, Hatman, thoughts on White Okolie beef? Is that a fight you want to see? Yeah, I want to see it. Did I get my name from the Khan Peterson fight? No. I was called Hatman long before the Khan Peterson fight. I did a post-fight review for the Khan Peterson fight. But I know who you're talking to. The infamous Hatman at ringside who was messing with the scorecards, according to Amir Khan. Afro Jam says, will we ever see Okolie versus Riakporhe? It doesn't look like it, does it? Okolie pulled out of the fight and he doesn't seem to want to reschedule it. I'm not sure what that's all about. I was looking forward to that fight as well. Yeah, Sean Barker, that was disgusting. Dominic Ingle drinking Kell Brook's sweat. That was literally disgusting. Unbelievably disgusting. It's a weird gym, bro. Dynamic Clip says Kell Brook got stabbed for hitting on her. Well, that's actually not what happened according to the voice note. So the voice note, which I posted on my Element, on my Patreon page, I posted a voice note there under the boxing tier. The infamous voice, the guy who does that infamous voice note, he says that's not how it went down. And he gives what he says is the real story for why Kell Brook got stabbed. It did have something to do with rainbow business, but not what you described there, according to him. Epic Euphoric Music says, Hatman, do you know Kurt from Counterpunch Boxing News? Yeah, I watch Counterpunch sometimes, yeah. Striker says, Hatman, am I misremembering things, or did you get a mention in Ring Magazine several years ago in an article about the rise of boxing channels? I cannot remember, to be fair. Ayed says, Khan got played in that Peterson fight. He was fighting, he was champion and A-side fighting in Peterson's hometown. He played himself. That's what Amir Khan did. He played himself. Because he did all that stuff voluntarily. He was making a voluntary defense. When you're making a voluntary defense, you don't have to fight in anyone's hometown. You know? You're giving a guy a shot. So, yeah, he played himself. Yeah, Jake, I think that Bricktop is using Bakoli's name for clout, associating it with a Talma, and also he might be trolling Ben Shalom, throwing a carrot out there, giving Ben Shalom false hope that Bakoli could get a opportunity against the Talma to steal his limelight, steal his thunder by beating him. Now, I reckon it's Frank Warren messing with Ben Shalom to some extent. Is it me or is IFL getting less and less popular? I think it is getting less and less popular. I agree with you. They don't have they don't have what they, I was going to say magic. Did they ever have magic? I think they did at one point with the Coogan and Eddie Hearn interviews. They were magic. But Coogan is not the same as he used to be. He's like going through the motions every interview now, fumbling his way through interviews, and I don't know what's happened to Coogan. Umar was a good addition for IFL, but he's gone. He's with Box Nation now, Frank Warren's little personal interviewer. The Scottish guy I think is decent. Andy McCart, I don't mind his interviews. But I don't know what's happened to Coogan, bro. I used to like watching Coogan interviews, but now, don't know what's happened to him. And the other people that have gotten there, yeah, they're not doing it. Ayad says Coogan's coughing is getting annoying as well. Yeah, it's getting excessive, isn't it? Luke Pine says, is Coogan still sanctioned for the Kinahan thing? I don't think Coogan was ever sanctioned. He was wanted for questioning by the authorities in America. Yeah, so if he'd gone to America, they would have detained him for questioning. And he didn't want to be questioned, do you know what I mean? I think that's what it was. He didn't want to be questioned. I think that happened to Tyson Fury as well, didn't it? Although I think Tyson Fury... Was Tyson Fury banned from America for a while? I think he might have been banned from America for a while. Or again, it could have been a thing where they wanted him for questioning. Or maybe they did question him and then ban him. I forget how it went down. Afro Jam says they were required to snitch. Well, that's what I mean. Yeah, they were. The American authorities wanted to question them about Kinahan's activities. and they must have figured that that's way too risky to allow the authorities to question him about Kinahan. They were like, nah, I love my life. Do you know what I mean? Let me not do that. Actually, all right, Ayad says, I do not like the Irish one IFL have. I actually don't mind him, you know. Yeah, I actually don't mind the Irish guy. What's the Irish guy called on IFL? I don't mind him, actually. I don't mind him. See, Afro Jam says they banned them after a certain amount of time after they were needed for questioning. Okay, so for refusing to be questioned, they got banned. I see. Colm, that's the guy. Colm McGuigan. Yeah, I actually quite like Colm McGuigan. I think he's all right. Did I catch any of the Misfits? No, I normally don't watch Misfits unless there's like, I don't know, some random fight that might pique my interest, which is quite rare. I don't normally watch Misfits. East Midlands Fight Fan says, remember the guy Coogan started with, James Helder, where is he now? James Helder actually started a football channel a few years ago, but I don't think he went anywhere with it. I could be wrong. But I think Coogan bought him out. I hope he got enough money from the buyout. And he started some football channel. Dynamic Clips saying he heard some crazy rumor about Helder. Yeah, I haven't heard that myself. Lucan says, why does Simon Jordan take exception to being called a news reporter? Maybe because he's an entrepreneur. Maybe he doesn't want to be referred to as a lowly news reporter when he's done so much more in his career. Perhaps that's what it is. What was his phone company? Simon Jordan's phone company that used to be quite big. What was that called? I forgot the name of it. And then obviously he owned a football club, but it was really that phone company where he made most of his money. Was it Phones for You? Was that Simon Jordan? Because Phones for You was very big. Andrew says Pocket Phone Shop. I don't think it was Phones for You, was it? I think that company's a bit too big. Simon Jordan would have been surely a lot richer than he is. And he is rich. So let me look it up out of curiosity. Remind myself. Yeah, because you look him up, right? On Wikipedia it says Simon Jordan is an English businessman. That's how he wants to be known, right? A businessman and media personality. The former chairman of Crystal Palace Football Club from Thornton Heath, South London. Yeah, he's from the Ends. Went to school with Adam Booth. Why doesn't it say the name of the company? It just says Jordan made his fortune in the mobile phone industry. He also co-founded the car magazine Octane, selling his 50% shareholding in 2006. It doesn't say the name of the company for some weird reason. That's weird. East Midlands Fight Fan says that Adam Booth boxed. Yeah, he did. He boxed as an amateur. Somebody says it was Phones for You. Oh, was it? All right, if it was Phones for You. He must have really made a lot of money because Phones for You was big. In fact, are they not still around? Someone's saying 1-to-1. 1-to-1 was the original name of EE. The network that's called EE was previously called T-Mobile and originally was called 1-to-1. But they did have shops, yeah, 1-to-1 phone shops. But that's a huge company. I don't think that's Simon Jordan. Yeah, I don't know why they don't have much information on his Wikipedia page about his phone businesses or phone business. They just mentioned that he had a phone business, and there's loads of detail about his time in football, his time in journalism, his personal life, but nothing about his phone stuff. That's weird. Anyway. Oh, okay, I see. So, Vibes Not Found says the company was Pocket Phone Shop, which he sold to 1-to-1. All right. He sold it to 1-to-1, so he never owned one. I was thinking, yeah, 1-to-1 can't have been his company because way too big. But he sold the company he did have to 1-to-1. I see. Jake says, I think EE was Orange. Now, EE wasn't Orange unless they merged. EE was T-Mobile, because T-Mobile turned into EE. In America, it's still called T-Mobile, for whatever reason. Island Grill says, was Spencer Fearon a pro? Yes, he was. Yes, he was. You should be able to find his fights on YouTube. You can certainly find his record on BoxRec. He boxed amateur, he boxed pro. He was pretty well known in South London for his boxing career. And he had a rivalry in the amateurs with... God, what's his name from Croydon? Forget the guy's name now. Wayne Alexander. Was it Wayne Alexander he had it? It was Wayne Alexander, yeah. And he got knocked out by Wayne Alexander horribly in an amateur bout, which used to be on YouTube. Yeah, he did have a good fight with James Walker, yeah. That was a wild fight. That was a wild fight with James Walker. That's right. Man, Wayne Alexander was a good puncher with a left hook. Very, very good left hook. And that's what he knocked Spenny Fearon out with. Spenny did the stanky leg when he got hit with that Wayne Alexander hook. Don Pelvito says, what does the voice note say? It spills the beans on Kell Brook's alternative lifestyle. And gives some backstory about why Brook got shanked in Spain. some of the stuff that was going on behind the scenes in the lead up to several of his fights, and an incident where he was, doing some bizarre stuff in the back seat with another dude, which led to a car crash. East Midlands Fight Fan says him and Takaloo was a good fight. Yeah, they had a rivalry because Takaloo was boasting about how he'd knocked out Wayne Alexander in the gym, which Wayne Alexander never really, I don't think he denied it. I think he admitted he got dropped in the gym, but said he didn't get knocked out by Takaloo. But Takaloo was proper boasting about it. Don Pill Vito says, where can I listen? Just joined. It's on my Patreon page. You have to go to my Patreon page on the boxing tier. Yeah, you can access it there. But yeah, Takaloo was doing all this boasting about knocking out Wayne Alexander in the gym. And when they fought, they had a wild fight, and Wayne Alexander knocked Takaloo out. Stretched him out. Another crazy fight. Wayne Alexander had some real barn burners. He definitely did. He had some real barn burners. I always thought Wayne Alexander looked a little bit like, especially in old age, right? Because Wayne Alexander's up there in age now. I always feel like he looks a little bit like Havoc from Mobb Deep. Because if you see Havoc from Mobb Deep, his face is all like swollen now as well. And Wayne Alexander's face is like swollen. And he and Havoc from Mobb Deep look kind of similar now. A shout out to Dynamic Clips for the super chat. He says, who do better against Floyd, Sugar Ray or Duran? I'd say Sugar Ray. Yeah, I'd say Sugar Ray would do better. Duran's arms are a bit short. And he's a naturally smaller guy. Obviously, Duran beat Sugar Ray in their first fight, but styles make fights and all that. I think Sugar Ray would do better against Mayweather, personally. Shout out to Green Entity. He says, who'd win? Andy Ruiz or Prime Ray Mercer? Yeah, it's a good fight. Both guys got good chins. Both guys can punch a bit. Ruiz had the faster hands. I'd say Mercer had the better jab. That's a real good fight, you know. That would have been a... See, one thing I can tell you for certain, that would have been an absolute war. Ruiz versus Mercer would have been a bloodbath, bro. That would have been a great fight. God, you guys are so good at coming up with these fantasy matchups that are really difficult to pick. That's a 50-50. That's a real tough fight. The Ruiz who fought AJ versus Mercer. Yeah, that's a tough fight. Because Mercer's not going to have any problem mixing it in the pocket with Ruiz. Because in his prime, he had a tremendous chin. And he had pretty fast hands too. Not as fast as Ruiz's hands, but Mercer had quick hands. God, who would win that fight? I might even edge towards Ruiz ever so slightly. But that's a hell of a fight. Green Entity says 8-ounce gloves, that's horsehair. East Midlands Fight Fan says, was Ray Mercer ever a world champion? He held the WBO belt, but that's back when the WBO belt was not seen as legitimate. It was like the IBO today. So yeah, he did hold the WBO belt. I think he won that against Francesco Damiani, if memory serves me correct. Knocked out Damiani with a big left uppercut Damiani's nose was bleeding like a tap. Encircled says Dubois versus Ibeabuchi. I would go with Ibeabuchi. Dynamic Clip says Hamza versus Belanga. Who you got? I'm edging towards Belanga slightly, but I wouldn't be surprised if Hamza won. I wouldn't be surprised if Hamza knocked him out, to be honest. But he has to let his hands go. I know he says he had a broken hand against the Dames, but he was too low volume even before the broken hand, you know? But I'm edging towards Belanga slightly. Jake says random one, Corey Sanders versus Bellew. Corey Sanders all day. He'd knock Bellew out. Mercer versus Tua. I got Mercer. Because Mercer can box, or he could box. You know, in his prime, he was in the 220s. So he could get on his toes and box a little bit when he had to, and Tua couldn't deal with any kind of movement at all. Jake says Saunders versus Hay. I guess you mean Sanders. Corey Sanders again. That's the battle of the backhands, isn't it? Corey Sanders' backhand was faster than David Hayes' backhand. Both were tremendously powerful with a backhand. I'll probably go Sanders again, you know. I'll probably go Corey Sanders again. The thing about Sanders is that his stamina weren't great. He was very upright, and he didn't have the greatest chin either. But he was so fast, and he could punch with both hands. So he had a great backhand, Corey Sanders, but he also was really powerful with the right hook and the right uppercut. Really powerful. And when Corey Sanders let his hands go, he had tremendous hand speed with combination punching. Tremendous hand speed. East Midlands fight fan. He's looking for a bloodbath. Gary Mason versus Johnny Fisher. Come on now. Gary Mason would have eaten Johnny Fisher alive. Why did Michael Moorer jump straight from light heavy to heavy? Because there was no money in the cruiserweight division. It was still a relatively young division. No money in it. So, he didn't see any point risking fighting people at cruiserweight for no money. Might as well just go straight up to heavyweight. Me versus Johnny Fisher. Could I beat him? Now, no. In my prime, I would have fancied my chances big time, but now, no. Striker says, Corey Sanders will always have a soft spot for me. The way he annihilated Bobby Ches. Yeah, and me too. Always thought Bobby Ches was a donut. Corey Sanders obliterated him. And I'll always have a soft spot for Corey Sanders. for the Klitschko fight, obviously against Vladimir, not Vitaly. But Corey Sanders hurt Vitaly more than anyone else did, even more than Lennox Lewis did with the left hand. And in fact, I swear Vitaly said that Corey Sanders hit harder than Lewis, and I can believe it. Corey Sanders was a tremendous puncher, and he had so much acceleration on his shots because of the hand speed. Remember Joe Hip? Yeah, I remember Joe Hip, a Native American heavyweight, for Tommy Morrison. They had a slugfest. Joe Hip had his jaw broken in that fight. His whole face. See, Joe Hip's face used to swell up. Crazy. His whole face used to swell up crazy, and it swelled up in that Tommy Morrison fight. God, there are so few Native Americans that you barely ever see them box, right? Because there are so few of them left. But Joe Hip was one of them. Big Native American guy. Virgil Hill was another Native American, although I don't think he was. I think he was one of the kind of watered down, mixed Native Americans, so he was barely Native American. Whereas Joe Hip might have been pure-blooded Native American. Jake says, do you think Sanders has been the fastest heavyweight southpaw to date? Yeah, probably. Yeah, probably. Very fast. And he had the most devastating left hand, southpaw left hand of any southpaw, any heavyweight southpaw at least I've ever seen. I've never seen a heavyweight southpaw with a left hand like that before or since. Okay, that's interesting. Tony says, I read somewhere that Native Americans are the only people who don't suffer with male pattern baldness. And when I thought about it, I thought, right, I don't think I've ever seen a balding native. I mean, neither. Come to think of it. I don't think I... But then again, because you see so few natives in general, then maybe statistically you just never get the chance to see a bald one. You know what I mean? But that is true. I don't think I've ever seen a bald Native American. But speaking of stuff like that, I saw a meme the other day on Instagram, right? And it was funny, but it kind of made me think. And the meme said, I've never seen a Chinese person pumping gas. I don't think I've ever seen a Chinese person pumping gas, a petrol state. I don't think I've ever seen that. And then somebody else said, have you ever seen a pregnant Chinese person or a Chinese funeral? They started going in. Them weird ones. But Chinese people are so stealthy that, they move like ninjas. So even though you may have seen them do that stuff, you can't recall because they're so low key with the way they move. Yeah, I've definitely never seen a Chinese funeral in my life. Definitely never seen a Chinese funeral. Definitely never seen that. In fact, I think that's what the meme was. I think it was never seen a Chinese food advert. And then it was people in the comments saying they'd never seen a Chinese person pump gas and all that stuff. Yeah, I think the meme was about never seen a Chinese food advert. That's true. Yet they're making loads of money from Chinese food and they never even advertise. But then somebody in the comments said they send you the menu through the letterbox. And that's their way of advertising. They just send the menus. Yeah, that's their tried and tested method of getting business. They just spam the menus everywhere. And you know, everyone's house needs at least one Chinese menu in it. It's like a ubiquitous thing at this point. You move into somewhere new, you get a Chinese menu and you're like, oh, okay, let me put that in the drawer or pin that up somewhere. Put a magnet on the fridge with a Chinese menu. But yeah, Chinese restaurants making loads of money and there's no adverts on television for them. Never. And also somebody said, and I mentioned this actually in a previous live stream, that Chinese people never eat the food that they serve us, and they really don't. Somebody said they've never seen a Chinese person at a Chinese restaurant. I have seen a couple of times Chinese people in a Chinese restaurant. And if you go to Chinatown, like in central London, you'll see Chinese people eating in a Chinese restaurant. But they never eat the stuff that we eat. You know, the only thing I've ever seen Chinese people eat in Chinese restaurants is white rice and soup. That's it. I've never seen them eat nothing else. I was at one Chinese buffet, and in fact, I think it was the Chinese buffet in Birmingham that got shut down when they found dog in the freezer. Gotta hope I was eating chicken that day. I mean, I hope what I was eating, what I thought was chicken was actually chicken. Because that place got shut down in Birmingham later on because they found dog in the freezer or whatever. But I remember being at that buffet because I was dating a girl from Birmingham at the time. And we were at the buffet and we were both observing this Chinese guy, like an older Chinese guy. And we were both intrigued to see what he would be eating. And he sat down at the table and he just started having soup. Yeah. And he would go back to the buffet, get more soup and come back. I swear this guy must have had about 5 bowls of soup. And we were like, right, this guy's must have hollow legs. Where's he putting all that soup? Afro Jump says Chinese tend to eat a lot of egg and pork. Yeah. Pork is their favorite meat. Yeah, that's one that everyone says on Instagram. Who's ever seen a baby pigeon? I've never seen one. But you know what I have seen? Once in my life, I saw something and it was one of the most bizarre sights in my life. Yeah. I saw a baby squirrel. Any of you ever seen a baby? I saw a baby squirrel. It was totally bizarre. Yeah. I saw a baby squirrel running across a footpath. And when I tell you this squirrel can't have been any more than 2 inches in height, 3 inches at most. It was tiny, but it was like a fully, you know, it had the bushy tail, gray and everything, but it was like a miniature version. It was so weird. That's the only time I've ever seen a baby squirrel. Yeah. But no, I've never seen a baby pigeon. Pigeons somehow go from egg to full size, and you never see the intermediate stages. Black Dynamite says, I heard Big John uses Chinese menus as wallpaper in his house. Yeah, might as well. Craig says that was just a midget little man squirrel, mate. It was a weird squirrel, whatever it was, bro. I never seen nothing like that before in my life. It startled me because it was so odd. Like, it took me a few seconds to process what I'd actually seen. You know them ones. I think Black Dynamite was saying Saunders' left hand better than Jalalov's left hand. Yeah, I'd say so. More velocity on it, as well as the power. Remember the red squirrels? You don't see them anymore. Red squirrels, I don't think I've ever seen a red squirrel. Because gray squirrels in the UK are an invasive species from America. And I don't think you ever saw red squirrels in London. I think red squirrels do still exist in the UK, but you have to go to like Scotland and, you know, some of the outer reaches of Britain to find them. I don't think they were ever really, at least not in my lifetime, existing in London. So I've never seen one. In terms of wildlife in the UK, obviously I've seen loads of different kind of deer, or several different kind of deer. Muntjac. A muntjac is another invasive species from China? Somewhere out there in Asia. A muntjac is a weird looking, I think it's classed as a deer, but they've actually got like tusks, or they look like fangs, but I think they call them tusks. I've seen a muntjac a few times. Various different types of deer. You know the Bambi deer, whatever they're called? I'm not sure what that species of deer is called. I've seen those. I've seen an adder. You know the snake? So I've seen the adder once. In fact, when I saw an adder, it was actually being attacked by a magpie. I had no idea that magpies were on that type of smoke. Because adders are obviously a venomous snake. And this magpie was trying to kill it. Yeah. So apparently magpies kill and try to eat adders, which are the only venomous snake in the UK. Shout out to RE7 for the super chat. He says, what happened to Max Kellerman? Turkey do the magic. Well, he got fired from ESPN. That's the last I heard of him. He and a couple of other people got fired. I don't know why. But yeah, several people got let go. And it's like only Tim Bradley survived. I don't know what he's been doing since. Shout out to Orca for the super chat. He says, birds in the magpie family can be very aggressive. Yeah, evidently. I learned that day when I saw the magpie going after this adder. You know? I was walking in a forest and it was in the middle of a footpath. And I saw this magpie, you know, messing with something. And as I got closer, I was like, wow, it's a snake. And yeah, it was an adder. And the adder was trying to strike at the magpie, but magpie was, you know, the reflexes was too good. And then the snake like slithered off into some grass, and the magpie followed it. It kept on trying to peck at it and kill it or whatever. And yeah, apparently you can look it up, and magpies actually do eat adders. It's kind of like, what are they called now? Mongoose, right? You ever seen those mongoose videos where they kill all sorts of venomous snakes in Africa and in Asia? They kill, not pythons, they kill cobras. You know, kill puff adders and cobras and all these like snakes that are absolutely deadly to humans. These little mongoose go out there and rip them to shreds. Shout out to JM. I think mongoose are pretty much the #1 snake killers, like venomous snake killers. It's weird, isn't it? It's weird how rock, paper, scissors nature is. Because a mongoose wouldn't stand a chance in a fight against a human. Not a chance at all. But yet the mongoose will go out there and kill snakes which are absolutely deadly to humans. One bite and you're finished. So it's like rock, paper, scissors, isn't it? We could kill a mongoose easily, but then get killed easily by a venomous snake ourselves, which the mongoose prey on. Orca says honey badgers. Yeah, honey badgers eat venomous snakes too. But they're not as skilled at killing snakes as mongoose are. Island Grill says London now has green parrots flying around everywhere. Yeah, that's been for quite a while. I guess they're an invasive species, right? It's weird. It's weird seeing parrots in England. Has there always been parrots in England, or is that, as I say, some invasive species thing? Because even before I left, several years at least, I remember seeing parrots. And green parrots, yeah. There's a park in London full of parrots, forgot the name. Don't know. I think you can probably find parrots in many parts of London. Afro Jam says mongoose do attack humans, they'll definitely bite. Yeah, they can bite, but a mongoose stands no chance against a human. Human would kill a mongoose in seconds. Do you know what I mean? Stand no chance. Human being can kill a mongoose, snap the neck, twist the neck in literally a matter of seconds. No problem whatsoever. But try to do that to a black mamba, or a green mamba, or a puff adder, or a king cobra. You know what I mean? You're probably going to die. Even if you kill the snake in the process, you're going to die. Because it's going to get some bites in. Whereas with a mongoose, no, you're just going to kill it. Yeah, it's going to bite you, but whatever. Little rodent biting you. You snap its neck. Dan Marie says, Hatman, how did you get so smart? By paying attention and by thinking. And asking questions. Victoria Park. I guess he's referring to where the parrots are. I think the parrots are pretty much in loads of places in London, I would have thought. Island Grill says they are invasive. Apparently, London has 30,000. Yeah, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them, yeah. There's a lot of them. Quite a few invasive species in the UK. The squirrels, parrots, muntjacs. Muntjac is a weird looking creature. If you ever see a muntjac in real life, they're weird looking. And unlike other deer type creatures, muntjac are normally solitary. So when I have seen muntjac, they've always been by themselves. Whereas most other deer, they move in groups. Somebody else asked that same question about my name. Did it come from the mysterious guy in Khan versus Peterson? Somebody else asked that earlier on in this stream. No, I was called Hatman long before that. Shout out to Trollsabad for the super chat. He says, Prime Holmes versus Prime Tyson. Who you got? I still got Prime Tyson. It would have been a better fight, but I still think Prime Tyson had the style. Holmes very upright. I reckon Tyson would have got to him. I know Mike Tyson said the opposite. He was very gracious in victory, humble in victory, however you want to decide it, however you want to describe it. In the post-fight interview when he knocked Holmes out, he said, if he was in his prime, I wouldn't have stood a chance. So he's, very nice and complimentary. But personally, I think he would have beaten Holmes prime for prime. Styles make fights. Afro Jam says, if you research rumors of large cats in the UK, well, that's been going on for decades. I mean, back in the 90s, on the television news, they released footage of what appeared to be a large cat down in, I think, Devon or Cornwall somewhere. And loads of farmers reported it, and their livestock were being attacked and so on and so forth. So yeah, the large cat thing, the big cat thing has been going on for decades. And there certainly were big cats on the loose in Britain at one point, because there were people in the 1970s, before they brought in certain laws to prevent you from having exotic animals, like, pumas and whatever. There were people that had these things in Britain and released them into the wild when they got too big to look after. That did happen. But the presumption was after a couple of decades they would have died out, not being in their natural habitat, not being able to breed and stuff like that. But then some people reckon that some of these big cats might have actually been breeding with feral cats, and therefore creating some type of hybrid between a big cat and like a domestic or a feral cat. So who knows? J. Crep says, any up-and-coming boxing prodigies of interest where you reside? None. This ain't a fighting nation. Very few boxers of any note from here. David X Freaky Fingers. Some of these names are crazy. He says, I don't know if this has already been mentioned, but would a Fisher versus Tommy Fury fight make sense? Somebody else mentioned that fight somewhere in an interview that I've seen over the past few days. I don't think it makes sense right now. Tommy Fury, I think, would have to fight at a similar weight to what he fought in his last fight several times more for it to maybe make sense at one point. Because there's a big size disparity. Johnny Fisher's like 245 pounds. Tommy Fury weighed about 210 for his last fight. So, 35-pound difference. Tommy Fury's very careful about who he boxes. It's not beyond the realms of possibility, but I'm not sure whether the Furies would go for that. Sean McNally says, who do you think would win between David Benavidez and Triple G? It's a good fight. It's a very good fight. Is it controversial to say David Benavidez? I'd go with Benavidez. Yeah, I'd go with Benavidez. Afro Jones says, research Jimenez, Costa Rican light flyweight. Yeah, I barely pay any attention to them tiny weights. the Sonny Edwards weights and all that, I barely pay any attention. What I can tell you is boxing is not a big sport in Costa Rica at all. And competitive sport in general is not really, it's not really a big sporting nation in general. Mark Hatch says Benavidez gets dropped easily. Triple G would stop him, in my opinion. I disagree. Triple G was what he was at middleweight against little guys. I mean, not little guys, but compared to Benavidez, they were little because they were middleweights. Benavidez was a massive super middleweight. Now he's a light heavyweight. Yeah, I don't think Triple G would have been anywhere near as effective against somebody naturally that much bigger than him. That's just my opinion. Jake says, Atama just dropped a video on Box Nation. Yeah, I saw. I clicked on the video. I haven't yet watched it, so I've got it up in one of my tabs. Afro Jam making the case for the lighter weights. I'm just not interested. Just not interested in little pipsqueak men. When them little man are wearing 8-ounce gloves, they make 8-ounce gloves look like 20-ounce gloves. That's how small them little pipsqueak men are. I watched a few Ricardo Lopez fights back in the days, and the odd anomaly here or there, but generally I'm not interested in watching them little tiny men. I'm not interested. Shout out to Danny for the super chat. He says, are you studying any languages at the moment? Always trying to study languages, but I'm so poor at picking languages up. I've been trying to study Swahili, a couple other African languages. I'm doing pitifully bad. Jake says, what's the lightest weight you pay interest in? I'll probably say normally maybe featherweight, but obviously you've had Inoue, and I've always been paying attention to Inoue. He's an anomaly. But normally I would say featherweight. Yeah. There have been a few below featherweight over the years who I have watched and paid attention to, but normally I'd say featherweight. If I see anything under featherweight, like the bantams and the super bantams, I probably won't watch. I probably won't watch. Dynamic Clip says Prince Nassim. Yes, Prince Nassim was super bantamweight, I think, when he turned over. But by the time he was fighting for titles, he was featherweight. He fought Steve Robinson, his first world title fight. That was featherweight. Shout out to Green Entity. It says, I'm so close to entering the real world. Damn. Please elaborate. Are you a spiritual entity communicating and super chatting from beyond the real world right now? Are you, please elaborate. We might have something supernatural going on here. Oh, you're about ready to graduate. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I thought you were being ironic. Okay, graduation. Oh, graduating today. So what field are you looking to go into with work? Drywall. Okay. So in construction then. Tosserman says those little men have to really stand out to be interesting, like Naz, Roman Gonzalez, or Inoue. I agree. You get a few outliers in those really light weights, but generally it's like, And personally, I've never really been into watching Chocolatito, Roman Gonzalez, to be honest. It's not a terrible watch, but I've never been particularly. I actually prefer, even though he's not as good a fighter, Martinez. Martinez was quite fun. Julio Cesar Martinez. He lost to Chocolatito, right? Am I imagining things? Julio Cesar Martinez lost to Chocolatito, didn't he? He got a beating off Chocolatito. I think I actually watched that fight. Shout out to High Road Protagonist. But I prefer Martinez's style. Jake says, Hatman, did you ever watch that disgraceful fight when Bouncer fought that bodybuilder guy? Yeah, Arms Corleone. I did a live commentary for that fight on this channel. That was the worst MMA fight in history. There can't ever have been a worse MMA fight than that. That was a shocker. That was an absolute shocker, that fight. The fighter who's disappointed Turkey the most, probably Canelo. Probably Canelo and Wilder. Yeah, Canelo robbed Turkey blind with a skull fight. Robbed the bank, bro. Shocking. He didn't even try to be entertaining, you know? Most people who actually have some shame would have tried to be entertaining in that fight. But the pair of them, not an ounce of shame between them. Canelo or William Skull. Horrible. Epic Music is saying, William Skull said that Turkey asked him not to hurt Canelo. Did he? I'd have to see the context in which that was said. If it was actually said at all. Thomas Leonard says, do you think Jake Paul could have success at Bridgerweight? He's not going to beat Kevin Lorena. And Kevin Lorena is the WBC Bridgerweight champion. Did the WBA have a Bridgerweight champion as well? You see, BoxRec don't even bother listing Bridgerweight on there. So how do I even check? Maybe go to the WBA website. It's either the WBA or WBO that also has Bridgerweight. But yeah, Jake Paul definitely ain't beating Kevin Lorena. So he wouldn't do good against him. Let's have a look at the WBA rankings. See if they've got Bridgerweight. It's either the WBA or yeah, they have Bridgerweight as well. So who have they got a Bridgerweight? Their champion is a guy with an unpronounceable surname. I mean, good God, man. That is a crazy surname. His first name is Muslim. Right? His surname is crazy, bro. It looks like somebody threw the alphabet in a blender. Good God. Let me post this surname in the live chat. I'm even going to try to pronounce that. That's the WBA Bridgerweight champion's name. Look at man's name. It's like gobbledygook. What a crazy name, bro. I feel like they're taking the mick out of us with some of these names. You know what I mean? Like, yo, let's just come up with a name that Western audiences will never be able to understand and that just blow their mind and baffle them. Let's make it as complicated as possible. Like they're trolling us with some of these names, you know? And they're trolling us. What kind of name is that, bro? Oh. Why is that funny? Because it's hard to pronounce. What do you mean, why is it funny? Look at man's name. He's got nearly as many letters in his name as the whole alphabet. Crazy. After watching out Conor Benn and William Skull box, do you think there's anything to the sparring story? Well, I'm sure they sparred. Nigel Benn was making out as though William Skull had to quit the sparring, but he could just be misrepresenting what happened, you know? Maybe Skull was set to do a certain number of rounds, and there was miscommunication because of the language barrier. And Nigel Benn spun it to make it sound like William Skull quitting the spar because Conor was too much for him. So, how long do I think Nigel Benn's had that same piece of chewing gum in his mouth? Well, he's one of these people that's got like I don't know, a big tongue or a short tongue or something. The way he talks is, yeah, bit mad. So anyway, this WBA Bridgerweight champion, I've never seen him. So I couldn't tell you whether he would wash Jake Paul, but certainly Kevin Lerena beats Jake Paul all day long, every day of the week, twice on Sunday. So the answer will probably be no. As in, you know, would Jake Paul be successful at Bridgerweight? I'd probably say no. Can Michael Hunter get back to his prime? Hell no. You only have one prime. There's no getting back to it. Once it's gone, and his prime is definitely gone. Craig Roachboxer says somebody just bashed a load of keys and said that's the champion. Hey man, they're trolling us with some of these names, bro. Like, come on. It's like that, I think this was a troll, but there's like an old Instagram YouTube clip of this Nigerian guy with a ridiculously long name, which ends in Osas. And some dude asking him, tell us your whole name, call your name. And he's like, and he goes through this crazy, yeah. I'm pretty sure that clip is fake. That's not the guy's real name, but It's almost getting like that now with some of these Dagestan dudes. Crazy ass long names. Oh, wow. Jake says Francis Warren video on TalkSport saying let's do Bakoli next August. All hot air, like you said. Yeah, I couldn't see Itama fighting Bakoli next. Or even Hrgovic, despite the fact that Hrgovic is with Frank Warren. Nah, I can't see him fighting Hrgovic next. Tony says it's like someone fell asleep on the keyboard. Oh, wow. Tony S. says, Hunter got wobbled badly against Hasim Rahman Jr. in one of those Triller shows, and they mysteriously cut the footage after he was about to go down. It's still up. Wow. That's when you know that Michael Hunter's in trouble in his career. If he's getting wobbled by Hasim Rahman Jr., dear oh dear. Hasim Rahman Jr. is absolutely useless. God, he's beyond useless. He lost to that Greg Hardy guy. Didn't Hasim Rahman Jr. like sue Mayweather or call the police on Mayweather or something like that over some type of incident in the Mayweather gym? I seem to remember some kind of legal issue between Hasim Rahman Jr. and Mayweather. And Hasim Rahman Sr. was an enforcer on the streets of Baltimore. Yeah, Hasim Rahman Sr. was really in them streets. And Baltimore is a rough city. Even now, it's very rough. Very rough. Hasim Rahman did very well to survive, the life he was in. I know he had some very close scrapes and whatnot. Very, very well to survive that life. In one of the roughest cities in America. Baltimore's been one of the most dangerous places in the United States for years and years and years. It's always like in the top 2 or 3 when it comes to like murder rate in America for decades now. Very dangerous place, Baltimore. Shout out to Jordan Anderson for the super chat. He says, have you read The Metaphysics? That's a book that you recommended previously, right? I have not. I've got a backlog now of people recommending books to me in the live chat that I've not yet read. I've got them lined up in the tab to purchase these books. Shout out to Jordan Anderson for the super chat. Big up, big up. But I am into metaphysics in general. A lot of people are into metaphysics without realizing that they're into metaphysics, because it's just logical deduction taken to its ultimate conclusion, you know? Okay, Dynamic Clip says, Hasim Ratman Jr. sued Mayweather for letting them spar with 0 rounds. Fight till you quit. Okay. It's a weird thing to sue somebody over, isn't it? Like, unless he was literally forced and they wouldn't let him get out of the ring or whatever. But then again, yeah, you're quitting. So I don't know. How would you sue someone over that? If you don't want to carry on, you just quit. Weird. Was he successful in suing him? Why did the British Boxing Board of Control ever allow Peter Buckley to compete? Because journeymen are necessary. Peter Buckley normally didn't get stopped. You know, for guys like that, circuit journeyman, boxing was like a trade, as in, you know, being a plumber, a plasterer. Literally, that's what it was like. He would fight, if not every week, a couple times a month. And that was literally his day job, you know? First Round Boxing says Team Ekow. Yeah, I think most people in this chat, including myself, are leaning towards Ekow Essuman, but it's, for me anyway, partly based on my suspicion that Josh Taylor is way past his best. Very inactive over the past 5 years, only 1 fight a year. Lost his last 2. You could argue last 3. Ross Kemp says, what do you make of the odds? Taylor is 1-3 favorite. Yeah. I think if you're a betting man, those odds are very attractive, but it is in Scotland, and so if it's competitive and it goes to the cards, you'd imagine they'll give Josh Taylor the benefit of the doubt. I mean, basically, Ekow Essuman is going to have to beat the brakes off Taylor. If he doesn't stop him, he's going to have to totally dominate to get a decision in Scotland, probably, isn't he? And thinking about it, maybe I should pick Josh Taylor. By hook or by crook. But he's going to be in a hell of a fight against Ekow Essuman, because Essuman is a dynamo. Not the most skilled fighter you'll ever see, but yeah, he throws a ton of shots. Yeah, Taylor's never been that good at fighting on the back foot. He's always been much better on the front foot coming forward. When he has to try and be slick, you don't look too clever. He's got an aggressive personality, and his style is best when he's aggressive. When he's pushed onto the back foot, he normally has problems, as we saw against Teo Lopez. He was pushed onto the back foot against Lopez and was not very effective. Lopez bullied him really in that fight. Teofimo. Mark says, genuinely not trolling, but I had Josh winning the first fight against Jack. It wasn't the robbery people say it was. I feel like people were just parroting what pundits were saying. It was close, though. Ross Kemp says, he had quick feet back in the day. The front foot stuff started with the Prograis win. Well, having quick feet is one thing, but then being good on the back foot is a different thing altogether. I mean, Mike Tyson had quick feet, but he was no good on the back foot. I think Josh Taylor's always been better being aggressive, letting his hands go, like he'd done Ohara Davis. He mashed Ohara Davis up on the inside. Ohara Davis was coming at him. Josh Taylor met him and was punching in between O'Hara's wide shots. Taylor used to, trade with you, but he would move around you, like Lomachenko. Not as skillfully as Lomachenko, but a similar idea. Lomachenko's not really a back foot fighter. He's more of a front foot fighter. But he moves around you as he's attacking you, Lateral movement. He moves around you to get different angles on you. And Josh Taylor used to do a lot of that. But now he's more, he does less of that and he's more stationary. When he has to move properly on the back foot, he's not very effective. Yeah, I remember watching the Ohara Davis fight live. Yep, it was a brutal fight. Mark says the Gad was slobbering over OD on TalkSport recently, begging to go on one of his prison visits. Oh dear. Let me guess, at one point, Gad was saying his favorite word, Extraordinary. Yeah, it's just it's extraordinary, isn't it? It's extraordinary. He's an extraordinary character. Oh my gosh. Tony says Gareth A. Davis is the type to open his Monster Munch with a pair of scissors. He's the type to eat a Greg's pasty with a knife and fork. Well, he wouldn't eat a Greg's pasty, but you know, a pasty is some description. He's the type to eat one with a knife and fork. Shout out to Matt in the chat. Does anyone else remember when the Gad accidentally tweeted a link? Raw, did he do that? To the most depraved you've ever seen in your life. That guy is something else. Wow, did he actually do that? Yeah, he definitely does that, Russ Kemp. Gad winks and makes his hands into two shooters in the mirror before he leaves his house. He definitely does that. That's guaranteed. And he blows the imaginary smoke off the top of his fingers afterwards. Man ripped off his whole image from Bono. It's crazy. And that two shooters thing is crazy, bro. All right, peeps, let's wrap this one up. Shout out to everyone who joined the conversation. Special shout out to those who donated via Super Chat. And a quick plug before I go. For those of you in the past who have asked for the infamous, notorious Kell Brook voice note, it is now on my Patreon page. If you want to access it and all my other exclusive boxing content, sign up to the boxing tier on my Patreon. This is the Kell Brook voice note right here. People are already LOLing all over the place over it. Crazy voice note. Some guy in Sheffield who's obviously in the Kell Brook inner circle spilling the beans on Kell Brook's alternative lifestyle activities over the years. All right. Also, there's the Johnny Fisher, Dave Allen commentary that I did where I've put my commentary over the actual fight footage, the entire fight, right, the full fight with my commentary. So you can check that out. And on the topical tiers on Patreon, the Brotherhood of Reason, there's obviously the Sinners. There's countless episodes and content on there now. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of episodes of videos and podcasts and all sorts of stuff I've done on there, which you'll have access to when you sign up to the topical tier, which is called the Brotherhood of Reason, or the whole shebang. And I did Sinners Decoded last week, which people really like. That's on screen there. And this week it's the Mechanics of Faith. So yeah, check me out on Patreon. But, shout out to everyone again for locking in. The Super Chat crew especially. Take care, be good, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. I'm out.